What if Percy Jackson and the Olympians was a Kingdom Hearts world? This concept is probably more likely than you think, given that not only is the Percy Jackson TV adaptation made and released on Disney+, but the Percy Jackson book series has actually been published by Disney Hyperion from its beginning. I think Percy's universe would fit extremely well in Kingdom Hearts, as friendship is a very major theme in both series. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen more overlap in the Percy Jackson and Kingdom Hearts fandoms. They're two of my favorite media franchises of all time, and I love them for similar reasons. But I digress. How would a Percy Jackson world look in Kingdom Hearts? Well, first of all, I think the obvious would be that the world's name would be Camp Half-Blood. I think this makes the most sense, as that's the most major location from the series, and would be one of the main locations in the world's story. Which leads to my next question. What would the world's story be? The Percy Jackson series is really long and there's a lot to choose from, but I think the best time for this story to take place would actually be in The Last Olympian, the final book of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. I have a couple of reasons for this. For one, it takes place almost entirely within the New York area. This allows a lot of time to be spent at Camp Half-Blood itself, as well as New York City during the Titan War. I think this makes the most sense to have a mostly self-contained story in the context of a KH world, while still giving high stakes and a lot of action within this world. Also, I think the visuals would be largely based on the Percy Jackson Disney Plus show, which is the latest and most well-known visual interpretation of the series and its story. Of course, as of writing this video, the show hasn't yet gotten to The Last Olympian, and in fact hasn't even been renewed for seasons 4 or 5 yet. Disney, please. So I will be basing the story off the book plot, not anticipating any major changes. The opening cutscene of the world would be Percy jumping from the Princess Andromeda as it explodes. This could lead into briefly showing Percy's dream of Krios and Hyperion, introducing the main conflict in the world as well as Hyperion, who could be a mid-world boss. We then cut to Sora arriving in Camp Half-Blood. As I'm writing this, we are still waiting on Kingdom Hearts 4 news. Square and Disney, please, I'm starving here. So I'm going forward assuming that Sora may be alone, so no Donald and Goofy. He technically could be with a party member such as Strelitzia in the context of KH4, but I'm writing this assuming he'll be alone since we don't have a strict basis on what Sora's party could look like right now. Hey, so small addendum, we've gotten a couple KH4 trailers since I originally wrote and recorded this video, and while some of the content may potentially change how this would work in Kingdom Hearts 4 specifically, I think going forward my idea still fits somewhat of Sora being alone, because A, we don't see Donald and Goofy reunite with Sora in the trailers, and in terms of his party in Coco, it is just world-specific members Miguel and Hector, so I think my idea still fits fairly well even with the new information that we've gotten.
This is a lot of new information.
But anyway, we'll keep going. Sora would arrive in the middle of the counselor meeting that takes place just after Percy arrives back at camp. I'd like to think Sora's arrival unintentionally lets Heartless into the camp, interrupting the counselor meeting and causing a bit of a battle that Percy joins in for as a party member. The bulk of the Heartless in this world could be based on Greek monsters, including the return of satyrs from KH3. This could also be a bit of a conflict within Percy, knowing that satyrs are usually the good guys, before he realizes that the Heartless satyrs are corrupted by darkness. This short fight is a quick way for Sora to gain trust with Percy and the other campers. Afterwards, they properly introduce themselves and the ongoing conflict with the Titans. Sora says how he is familiar with the Greek gods, saying he's friends with Hercules and has met Zeus and Hades. There could even be a meta joke here about how Hercules is the Roman name for the hero Heracles. Percy saying something along the lines of, "Annabeth is always nagging me about how they got that wrong." This is a quick way to introduce Sora to the world through his previous experience in Olympus Coliseum. When Sora is asked where he's from, he could say something along the lines of, "Let's just say I'm from a different camp far away," to try keeping the world order in check. The camera could focus on Chiron here, giving a curious look to Sora, perhaps thinking he's from a certain other demigod camp in California, Camp Jupiter, supported by the fact that Sora refers to Heracles as Hercules. To extend the amount of time spent in Camp Half-Blood itself, Sora could help Percy and the other campers with preparations and training for the coming war. These could even be some minigames within the world, maybe something like Pegasus riding or archery practice for simple minigames themed to training the demigods of Camp Half-Blood. All this up until Percy, now joined with Sora, meets up with Nico D'Angelo and Percy's pet hellhound, Mrs. O'Leary. There could be a brief interaction of Sora being afraid that Mrs. O'Leary is a Heartless, and Percy says, "No, Sora, it's alright, she's a hellhound. Well, a good hellhound. It's complicated, but trust me, she's a friend." Percy introduces Sora and Nico to each other, and Sora would initially mistrust Nico, knowing he's a son of Hades and remembering his own previous experience fighting against the god of the underworld in Olympus Coliseum. But Sora ultimately follows in Percy's trust of Nico. This is a good time to mention, I don't think any of the gods we've seen previously in Kingdom Hearts, most notably Zeus and Hades, would actually show up in this world, just be mentioned. Any point where they would usually show up in the book could have Sora separated or have the scene slightly changed. This can leave it ambiguous if they are technically the same characters or different iterations within the context of Kingdom Hearts. This also avoids any conflict of what they would look like in this world and if or why they'd look different. Nico would be hesitant in allowing Sora to join him and Percy in his mission, but ultimately allow it to happen as Percy would insist Sora tags along. They would travel to May Castellan's house, meeting Hestia, and then to Percy's apartment, where he gets Sally's blessing to get the Curse of Achilles, making him fully invulnerable except for one spot on his body, as that would be the best way to stand a chance against Luke/Kronos, as he had done the same. Sora could even have some input on this, saying that Percy's heart is strong, and he's doing this for his friends, making it worth the risk. This would likely just be a couple of cutscenes, since these would ultimately be small areas and interactions. After this, they travel to Central Park, where they find Grover Underwood asleep. There could be an enemy encounter here to defend Grover from Heartless, where Nico joins as a second party member. Percy then wakes up Grover with his empathy link, who tells them about Morpheus putting the people of New York to sleep. Grover then plays his panpipes to open the door of Orpheus' entrance to the underworld. The underworld in this world could be designed artistically in a way similar to the underworld in Kingdom Hearts 2, but just entirely different areas. Once again, leaving it ambiguous as to whether or not this is the same underworld as Olympus Coliseum. I think this could greatly lean into the mystery of unreality in KH4 and the search for Sora. Is there really a connection here or not? When reaching the River Styx, Nico leads Percy and Sora further toward Hades' palace, where they encounter the Fury Electo, aka Percy's old math teacher, Mrs. Dodds. While in the book they encounter all three Furies here, as Nico led Percy into a trap, I think this encounter could start with just Electo, allowing for a bit of a mini-boss to take place. After beating this boss, the other two Furies show up as backup, surprising and capturing Percy and Sora. At this point, Nico would tell the Furies to take Sora to the prison cell Percy later ends up in so he can bring Percy to Hades alone, as Sora is nothing more than a complication to this plan. This allows Percy's encounter with Hades to take place while avoiding him actually being seen by Sora, and by extent the player in this world, again leaving the ambiguity. When Percy is finally brought to the cell, this could be an opportunity for Sora and Percy to have a conversation about the major theme of this world, fatal flaws. Percy could be beating himself up over falling for this trap. "I guess loyalty really is my fatal flaw," Percy says. "Fatal flaw?" Sora asks. "My biggest weakness," Percy explains. "Every hero has one, the one thing that puts me in the most danger, my loyalty to my friends." Sora thinks about this for a moment. "I'd say that's my fatal flaw too," Sora concludes. "I had to make a decision recently, one that put me at risk. But it was to save a friend, one I really care about. Because of that decision, I'm further separated from all of my friends, more than I've ever been before. I don't know if I'll ever see them again. But I don't regret it. Even if that loyalty hurt me, it helped my friends, so it's not all bad, right?" I think this is a perfect place to show Sora's growth and resolve after KH3. Abusing the power of waking taught him that his actions have consequences, pushing him into unreality and separating him from his friends. But he did it anyway, because he didn't care about himself. He cared about doing good for Kairi and his other friends. These words would comfort Percy, but he still has the lingering self-doubt in the back of his mind. Next, Nico will show up to break Percy and Sora out. This plays out exactly as it does in the book. Percy angrily pins Nico to the ground, and Nico explains that he didn't know his father wanted to capture Percy like that. Sora, despite his initial mistrust of Nico, encourages Percy to believe him, as he believes in Percy's trust of his friend. Nico helps them escape, and together they ride Mrs. O'Leary back to the River Styx. Here, Percy bathes in the Styx to gain the Curse of Achilles. While Percy is in the Styx, there could be a timed encounter with infinite enemy spawns where Sora and Nico have to protect Percy until he resurfaces. At the end of it, Percy emerges and pushes off the remaining Heartless with his newfound strength and invulnerability. I think after this encounter would be a great place for Sora to get the water spell or an upgrade for it. It fits twofold here, because this is Percy Jackson, the son of Poseidon's world, and this encounter took place at the River Styx. While Percy and Sora return to New York City, Percy convinces Nico to stay behind and convince his father to join the fight against the Titans. When they get back to the surface, Percy will ask Sora a favor: to return to Camp Half-Blood and try to convince the Ares cabin to join the fight. I think this shows that Percy really trusts Sora and believes in him being able to give Clarice and the Ares cabin a reason to fight. I should note here, yes, this would make Sora miss some of the plot progression seen in the books and even part of the war. I know this was a big dislike of the Disney worlds in KH3, but I believe this is warranted to keep the single worlds cast from getting too bloated from the player's perspective in terms of the amount of characters introduced, and offer a new, small but intriguing perspective back at Camp Half-Blood. Sora will return to camp and try and fail to convince Clarice to join the battle. She will remain adamant about not fighting, but someone else will see Sora's resolve: Selena Beauregard. Sora will be frustrated that Clarice isn't listening to him. Selena will encourage him to return to New York and join the battle, that she will convince Clarice to change her mind. She'll ask Sora to trust her, that she has a plan. Sora returns to New York City and heads towards Central Park in hopes to find Percy. On the way there, Sora will encounter and help multiple groups of demigods fighting Heartless monsters. When he finally reaches Central Park, Sora will join Percy in fighting Hyperion. This will be one of the major boss fights of the world. Hyperion would heavily use fire-based attacks and hit really hard, but ultimately be pretty slow. There could be some reaction commands of Sora and Percy working together to create a hurricane to douse Hyperion's flames. After winning the boss fight, Hyperion will be weak enough for Grover and the other satyrs to trap him within a maple tree. We would see more highlights of the war, including Percy activating the automatons scattered around New York City using Daedalus's Plan 23. However, Sora and the Half-Bloods will eventually be pushed back to the doors of the Empire State Building, only to be saved by Chiron and the Party Ponies, who push back Kronos' army. This gives a brief moment of rest for everyone fighting. This is an opportunity for Sora to tell Percy of his unfortunately failed attempts to convince Clarice, but also of Selena's assurance. Sora and Percy both take the time to rest in preparation for the remaining battle. The next major encounter will be the fight with the Draken. I think this would be a bit more of a short and scripted battle, similar to the Demon Tide fight in Twilight Town in KH3, but with some fun and cinematic reaction commands weaved in. The fight will be interrupted by the arrival of the Ares cabin, giving hope that the Draken can be defeated, as it is destined to be defeated by a child of Ares. Both Percy and Sora are surprised to see Clarice leading the charge. However, after falling to the Draken, they realize it wasn't actually Clarice, it was Selena. The real Clarice arrives soon after, and Selena reveals that she had been acting as a spy for Kronos' army, having been close to Luke before meeting Charlie Beckendorf, and continuing after Beckendorf died because she had been threatened, and she then passes away. In a fit of rage, Clarice single-handedly kills the Draken. Percy and Annabeth then retreat to Olympus and to the throne room of the Olympian palace, where Percy attempts to convince his father Poseidon to come help the fight with the other gods against Typhon. Sora stays at the base of the Empire State Building to help hold off Kronos' army. The battle continues after Percy and Annabeth return, as Kronos successfully makes his way into Olympus and to the throne room, Percy, Annabeth, and Sora following close behind. Similar to the underworld, Olympus could have similar design elements to KH3's Olympus Realm of the Gods to have the lingering potential connection. The final boss fight of the world against Luke/Kronos takes place in the Olympian throne room. Annabeth is, as in the book, incapacitated and still pleading with Luke, trying to break through Kronos' control. Sora and Percy will fight Kronos together. Kronos will be a quick and deadly boss, able to attack in wide areas with his scythe. He'll also be able to cast slow magic on Sora and Percy, mirroring his abilities in the books. When ending the fight, Kronos will be weakened enough for Luke to finally break through. While struggling to keep control, Luke will tell Percy that in order to defeat Kronos, he has to be slain by his own hand, to avoid Kronos regaining control. Percy picks up Annabeth's dagger and gives it to Luke, who stabs himself in his weak spot, killing himself, and Kronos along with him. The rest of this world's story would follow pretty much exactly as it does in the books, but I think Sora would decide to skip out on meeting the gods when they return to Olympus. I'll be the first to say this is a bit of a cop-out to keep with my idea of not actually showing the gods like Zeus or Hades to keep the ambiguity, but I think it can also fit with Sora's humble character. It's no big deal. I'm happy to help. I don't need any glory. Sora would, however, meet up with everybody at Camp Half-Blood and even be part of the group tossing Percy and Annabeth into the lake. Before leaving officially, Sora would be gifted his own camp necklace with that year's bead, as thanks for helping the camp in the war. This would be the keychain for this world's Keyblade. Shout out to my friend Phoenix Burst for doing the art of this Keyblade based on my ideas. It is largely based on Riptide from the Percy Jackson Disney Plus series, with the trident shape that they use in the show's logo as the teeth. You can see the leather necklace hanging off the bottom with the bead at the end. Assuming Keyblade transformations would return, this one's would be a trident for obvious reasons. I'd say stats-wise it would be fairly balanced between strength and magic, and could have the Waterza ability like Wheel of Fate in KH3. But that's pretty much how I'd picture a Percy Jackson world to go in Kingdom Hearts. To be clear, there is definitely still room for more encounters and plot beats to be weaved in. I was primarily focusing on the major beats of the world and speeding through or skipping some of the minor ones for the sake of keeping the pacing reasonable for a single Kingdom Hearts world. Also, I know I didn't mention some major characters that show up in the scenes that I described, such as Thalia Grace or Ethan Nakamura. But I'd say they'd likely still be there, just more in the background, as otherwise it would just add to the bloat of characters and context needed to follow along. But let me know what you guys think. Is there anything you'd add or change to this? Let me know in the comments. I had a ridiculous amount of fun writing this out and developing the idea. Kingdom Hearts and Percy Jackson are my absolute favorite media franchises of all time that both hold a very special place in my heart. And the potential of something like this happening just gets me super excited. Also, I have to give massive shoutouts to my friend OG Scrax for helping me think out ideas and concepts for the world, and to my friend Chappie for doing the amazing concept art and storyboards you've seen throughout the video. Please go give them both some love, it really means a lot. Thank you for watching, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more similar content in the future, and I will see you all next time.